And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're back in business with a showdown between the Tomb Kings, who shall be led by Arkin the Black on his evil cackling necromancer chariot. Today, my friends, we face off against the Dwarves, who shall be led by Dactyr, and I believe he is going to be coming in hot with the Rune Lord. Definitely not a bad choice. Slowing down constructs and chariots is always a good thing. Now, as far as my army goes, here in the front line, it is going to be skeleton warriors. I'm not really a big fan of bringing infantry quality against dwarves because what happens is a miner with blasting charges just rolls up, costing 400 gold, and just blasts your tomb guard into oblivion. Your Kepler guard, sometimes Kepler guard isn't bad. It gives you a nice, sustainable kind of anchor piece in your army with regeneration and good staying power, but in my experience, dwarves with blasting charges usually just take out your infantry really quickly. So investing in other assets like Ushabti, Tomb Scorpions, Chariots is really the way to go in this matchup. So front line here, not front line, but monstrous line. It's going to be 3 groups of Ushabti. I've really been enjoying these guys quite a bit lately. I notice in tournaments, a lot of Tomb Kings players don't use Ushabti, but I really think they're quite solid. I mean, an unbreakable monstrous infantry, has really good, damage output with 72 weapon strength and its bonus for its infantry. And of course, dwarves are an infantry roster, so it's going to be a decent choice here. And it's more about the threat overload because, yeah, you can go with like 2 Tomb Scorpions and then just get more, infantry and things like that. But in this case, like the dwarves want to shoot Ushabti and Tomb Scorpions and your chariots with cannons. And oftentimes you'll maybe see 1 or 2 cannons in this matchup. So it's a bit of a threat overload situation. That's kind of my school of thought and the principles here with the Ushabti. So it's going to be triple Ushabti, double Tomb Scorpion. We have Arkin the Black, and he's going to be backed up by a Necrotect as well as a Tomb Prince over there. So Necrotect is here to heal the Tomb Scorpions, and the Tomb Prince is just there to, be another annoying character that the dwarves have to deal with. Now, up in the sky, we do have 2 Carrion, just in case my mighty foe here did decide to go with the Gyrocopter play, which isn't uncommon. Gyrocopters can be very good against Tomb Kings. The Brimstone guns can really wreck constructs, and the bombs aren't bad either. So 2 Carrion just to have some answers there. Although in retrospect, looking at my army, if you had gone with like triple Gyrocopter with missile support on the ground, I don't know if I would have been able to deal with it. So perhaps a little bit of a weakness in my build, but something to discuss another day. So for my opponent's army, it's going to be miners with blasting charges combined with dwarf warriors. Pretty standard. The dwarves have such a heavy advantage in the infantry fight in this matchup. The dwarf warriors are going to be able to beat down skeleton warriors, but will hold their own against Tomb Guard also with their armor. So for the most part, you can get away with using cheap troops and just saturating them with blasting charges. Because, dwarf warriors holding up Tomb Guard while they're getting blasting charged by miners is going to be really powerful. So that's pretty much it. Double Slayer in the back. He's got Dragonback Slayers and regular Slayers, a single cannon, and he is going to be going with Althar's Raiders and a massive core of Rangers with great weapons. And these guys, if I sit still for a second, get caught in a bad place, the great weapon throwing axes on these Rangers can be really punishing for sure. But they're a bit of a glass cannon compared to like Thunderers. Thunderers themselves have 80 armor, so they're much tougher to take down. But Rangers really do pack some massive punch if they're able to get you in their grips. Because you look here, Thunderers have 18 missile strength here. Let's look at the AP values. We can kind of guess the damage output here. So yeah, you can see 18 missile strength with 17 AP, which is really good. Here we have 44, and the missile strength or the AP is 26. So yeah, pretty good damage overall, and those guys can really pack some punch, albeit at a very short range there. So let's get this party started, guys, and see if the mighty Dawi can hold back my Tomb Kings as they surge across a pretty unfortunate map for me here. Obviously, playing in the big open field is going to be nice for dwarves. I actually did see it, so I went with more of a rush build. I wanted to try like a Bone Giant Ushabti build and use a Khalida and really try and catch my opponent off guard, but on this map, I needed some terrain to work with, so I decided to go with a bit of a rush, which I do think is the better way to play against dwarves. Historically speaking, this has been a matchup that is dwarf favored, but it's not unwinnable for Tomb Kings. I would say maybe like a 60-40, 55-45 type matchup that does favor the dwarves, but that doesn't mean it's not winnable from the Tomb Kings. And that's what's really cool about this game. Even matchups that are considered to be really bad, there's so many, there's so much diversity in characters and builds, and some factions more than others, but usually you can find a way to win matchups that are very bad. I've actually seen some folks playing the Vampire Coast against dwarves lately and actually performing quite well, and that's considered to be like an 80-20 matchup or a 70-30 matchup, like really bad for the Vampire Coast. But yeah, it's cool to see people kind of mixing it up and trying out new things. As such, we are going to be charging in with our birds here in the back, so the Carrion lurk in the shadows. And against builds like this, it's really important that if you're playing Vampire Counts or Tomb Kings, you don't want to just send in, trickle in. Reaganomics isn't going to work here. You need to send those bad boys in like all together. So you'll notice that my Carrion are not going to be engaging until my frontline troops do engage. So I send in the Tomb Scorpions first. And the reason I do this is to try and get my opponent to use his blasting charges. And we do. So we bait out the blasting charges from those miners. It's, at a huge cost here because he did mark me by Ulthar, making the blasting charges actually do big damage. And look at that. Throwing axes, Rangers, and the blasting charge is really able to Shrek my Tomb Scorpion. So at this point, I'm trying to pull back, but I'm slowed by the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin. So things are off to a very rough start. My Ushopti are also getting pounded by the cannons, but now this is where we can strike back. So I do use Arkin the Black to summon some skeletons, and he's going to be cackling all the way to the blood bank back here as he does ride into these dwarven lines. And with Arkin, the only spell I brought was Spirit Leech. My whole idea was basically just spam Spirit Leech on Slayers the entire game. You know, arguably I could have brought Fate of Buna as well, but I really just wanted to use Spirit Leech on Dragonback Slayers because they're one of the biggest problems in this matchup. So now front line is mainly skeletons. We did bait out some blasting charges, but we have also gotten into the back line pretty well. Spirit Leech doing good damage to these guys, but my opponent reacting quite well with the Dragonback Slayers pulling in, trying to finish off that very tattered Tomb Scorpion. But, you know, it's always going to be a little bit painful at first. You can see the bounce power is pulling into the Dwarves' favor as they've done a lot of damage, but I'm trying to overload this flank and just destroy his front line here. So I pull back, I'm able to jump on those Dwarf Warriors, break those bad boys, and now we're going to be kind of trying to overload here, get these Thunders, and then drift over here to shut down the Rangers. Granted, some of his guns are singing quite happily, these proud Dwarven guns, unleashing a fully erect salvo here into those Ushopti, and they're definitely not happy about this. The Necrotech does, of course, give them missile resist if he's nearby, but he is not. So Tomb Scorpion and Ushopti here, a little bit alone, but we are breaking through the Dwarves' front line to an extent. The Dwarf Warriors are buckling under the Ushopti skeleton pressure, and on this side, it's looking a little bit chaotic for the Dawi, as we do have the Necrotech and the Tomb Prince here just rolling dirty, and Arkin the Black doing the same thing. So here he comes, and the Thunder is definitely the biggest threat. I feel like I can kind of maneuver around the Rangers to an extent, but the Thunders have really good range and really good stopping power, and it's more or less guaranteed, because like I said, the range is much, much better than the Great Weapons. But the Great Weapons, as far as ammo used, Althar's Raiders have gotten about 1 volley off. It looks like maybe 2 volleys on these Rangers. So they haven't been able to get too much stopping power, but this was a moment where I was really clinching, man. I was like, oh god, the Rangers are turning around. This is going to be big damage. And now they're throwing into my Tomb Prince here. They're throwing into Arkin, so I do respond with Liber Mortis, which pretty much halves the damage. And we're going to be just trying to bull rush past these Slayers. Using a Skeleton Summon from Arkin the Black is one of his best assets. Anytime you're being chased by Slayers, it can just peel them off. So we drop Skeletons on top of the Slayers, which is a really good trade for us, because Arkin Skeleton Summon does drop 150 Skeletons as opposed to the standard 120. So that's going to occupy the Slayers while we Spirit Leech them. Pretty much the perfect recipe for bringing those bad boys down. In the meantime, we are able to get on top of the Althar's Raiders, and the Slayers are all mucked up in combat here, so there's nothing really to protect them from the Chariots. And he doesn't have a character like Grombrindle. For actually a lot of the game I did think it was Gromby, so I was like being really scared and running away from that character, but it is just a Rune Lord, and Rune Lords lack AP, and you know, all my Chariot characters here are very, very heavily armored. So I realized there was one spot I couldn't really shut down too well, so I do summon my Ushopti here. Ushopti on top of the guns, which my opponent was doing a very good job kind of singing home and blasting some of my characters. So the main thing against Dwarves, if you're playing Tomb Kings, is to remove, you Spirit Leech, you focus down the Slayers with Chaff and Skeletons, and you try and just eliminate all the ranged assets, because that's what's going to kill you. The Slayers can kill you as well, and oftentimes the late game does devolve into a couple Slayers versus your blob of characters and constructs and things like that, because your infantry really doesn't stand the test of time in this matchup. Although that's something to test, maybe like a Tomb Guard front line, but the blasting charges are just so damn good. It's really, really tough to make that work. Some more throwing weapons here. My opponent's Rangers did break, but I did see them in the open field, so I'm going to be making all efforts possible here to run these guys down. And you can see Arkin the Black definitely having a good old time here against the Rangers, and yeah, he's whacking them with his cane, you know, doing what evil Necromancer lads do. So I do have to split forces here. We have Arkin plus the Tomb Prince on those ones. And it looks like the Necrotech, is going to be bouncing over here. But Bounce of Power is a little bit my favorite at this point, although pretty even for the most part. But my infantry is almost gone. I have summoned Skeletons here. These Skeletons are crumbling down. My actual Ushopti are crumbling. And my Summon here is going to be disappearing here in a moment as well. So, of course, this was a ladder battle. But typically when I play ladder battles, I do my best to make sure I'm following the tournament rules that I play under as well. Because it makes a more pleasant experience for your opponents, especially if you're facing off against newer players. Because obviously, you know, if there were no tournament rules or anything like that, you know, people could essentially just run in circles around the map with Arkin the Black, draw kite the Dwarves, build up enough Spirit Leeches to just kite them into infinity. It's really obnoxious stuff for sure. So I do my best to do that, and I encourage you guys, even, you know, if you don't follow the picks and whatnot, ladder has its own picks, and honestly, the ladder pick system isn't bad. As it pertains to limitations, I think CA did a decent job with that. That makes the experience pretty good for players here. Anyways, Arkin the Black's not Mortis Engine, but Curse is going to be going down, so I do get whacked on the dome pierced by that Rune Lord here. There's still a lot of angry Dwarven infantry. There's Longbeards in here, but I do have a Skeleton Summon. The longer Arkin the Black is in combat, the quicker, not quicker, it recharges, but it only recharges when he's in combat. So you have to be fighting and or using the Staff of Nagash, which does take 30 seconds off the cooldown. I honestly think Arkin the Black is probably one of my favorite lords to use. Like, I really like his Chariot, I really like his abilities, his kit is incredibly awesome, and Lore of Death is a pretty solid Lore of Magic. So, In the meantime, just doing my best to chase off Thunders and units on the periphery here, and you can see that your boy Necrotect here going to be jumping on those Thunders. He's got some Rangers coming back, and I know I have a fresh Skeleton summon here, which is going to be buying me time to cycle charge. So I'm just kind of rolling around with, Arkin, trying to make sure nothing of value comes back. So we shatter those guns here. The Necrotect's going to be jumping over to shatter this gun crew here, hopefully. And yeah, Chariots are just so good against Dwarves. Like, every time they pull out their guns to shoot, they're getting rode down. This guy's got a whip, too. Look at that, whipping those Dwarves. Not the best AP, but honestly, you don't really need it. I think that's a misconception about the Dwarf and Armor matchup in general. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm Beastman, I'm going to bring Gorby's Chariots, or I'm Chaos, I'm going to bring Gorby's Chariots as well, or Razor Gores and Gorby's Chariots. I need the big AP, but against Dwarves, like, any sort of Chariot is going to get you tons of kills. That's why I really think going for cheaper non-AP Chariots is often more cost-effective. There are circumstances and builds in which the AP Chariots can be really good, but in my general experience, going with these bad boys is the way. So 129 kills on this guy, 108 on Arkin, 112 on the Tomb Prince. It's just been pure devastation. But things are getting a little bit spicy, guys. All I have left are the Skeleton Warriors fighting here. He still has a lot of infantry left, but my Spirit Leeching and targeting of the Slayers has been good. 5 Slayers here, and I believe the other Dragonback Slayers only have a couple models left. Yeah, 1 model left. So just doing my last cleanup here. We do break those Rangers with great weapons. I don't think there's any ranged assets coming back at this point. I'm looking around the map. There is a cannon crew that could perhaps get back online, which would actually be surprisingly devastating if that thing started shooting at me again. I'm very beat up here. So yeah, we're more or less in combat here. So Arkin and the Tomb Scorpion and the boys are going to be chilling. And here you can see this guy's going to be bouncing out here to help out against those miners with blasting charges. So yeah, the last of my skeletons just disappeared. So basically at this point, I just charge in with my 2 characters, and I'm not going to be cycle charging anymore at this point, now that I just noticed my skeletons were gone. So what we do is we just have to hope Arkin the Black is going to be able to get another skeleton summon off. So we're just sitting, having a good old time. Chariots, of course, aren't the best in sustained melee, but the bonus versus infantry against the Dwarf infantry certainly makes it worth it. Balance of power is pretty even still, honestly, considering he still has the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass and Longbeards. And if I were to sit in combat and his Rune Lord were able to do some damage, I still don't think the Rune Lord could beat the 3 characters here, even in their very tattered state, plus the Tomb Scorpion coming over and gooning him. So here I am able to pull back because I summoned Skeleton Warriors, which does fulfill the attacking rule, which I usually follow. And in this case, we're going to be attacking the Rune Lord here. So we're charging back in, balance of power going massively in the favor of my Tomb Kings at this point, and the Skeletons plus the Goon Squad here is going to be breaking the back there of that army. So well played. It was a fun match. Certainly a fun one. I like playing Dwarves versus Tomb Kings. It's certainly challenging, but very, very rewarding once you're able to get in there. But yeah, as far as his army goes, I like the blasting charges. I like the Dwarf Warriors. I like the Slayers. And he did mention to me, I think during or before and after the game, that he was experimenting with the Rangers. Or he told me he was experimenting pre-game, and then post-game he mentioned it was the Rangers that was his experiment. And I would agree that they're not as optimal as some other choices. Personally, what I would probably do, Slayers are a huge nightmare in this matchup. I would cut just the Rangers, get another Slayer, and maybe like 1 more Thunder. And I honestly am a big fan of Grombrindle as well, like Combat Lords in this matchup, because Smoke Bomb is really good, it slows, and it gives you an extra AP character to kill constructs. Even mixing in Gotrek can be really powerful, so you could cut like all Rangers. Let's actually go to the drawing board on this. But yeah, well played, Doctor. It was a solid scrap, man. Definitely like a 7 or 8 minute game there. So let's go ahead and get this bad boy going here. Go to custom battles and do it to it. Where art thou, Dwarfs? So yeah, Gromby's really good. You can strip him down. He's pretty cheap too, only 1,500 for a smoke bomb. You don't really need his other items. And from there, I 100% agree with his blasting charges. I think that's great. I'm also a big fan of Longbeards. They're much tougher to kill. Oh, it must be on like small funds or something right now. I was experimenting with something. Anyways, from here, cannons or something, yeah. Against Ushapti Greatbow, having a single cannon I think is a really, really good choice. Double Thunder is always nice. So we have our front line more or less. Slayers, Slayers, and Slayers. Definitely triple Slayer is going to be pretty juicy here. I'm almost like, sometimes I do even like going with double cannon. And, you know, the Gyrocopters can be really good. I mean, the Dwarves have a lot of different ways to play this matchup. But yeah, mainly just protecting your, you know, 1 Slayer to each Thunder is going to be pretty good. Having a front line of Longbeards is going to be quite durable. The Skeletons and Ushapti will take a long time. He had Dwarf Warriors, so it's a little bit easier for me to get through the front line, but even still. You know, and if you don't like Thunders too, if you're more of kind of an Iron Drake Trollhammer Torpedo guy, that works very well also. Personally, my personal preference is the Thunderer. That's just my playstyle, but they're arguably both very good and equally good in my opinion. Like, you can get away with either. So from here, I'm almost tempted to get like a 4th Thunderer here, but yeah, we have the blasting charges, we have the Longbeards, we have the triple Slayer to deal with, you know, monsters and scary stuff. You could get a wild Gotrek in here, cut him down. What would you have to cut? Cut one of you and then just get like this. Like, something like this could be very scary for Tomb Kings for sure. Yeah, you got the 2 Longbeards and Miners to hold the front, triple Thunder, cannon. Gotrek is going to be a huge pain. He'll murk Tomb Scorpions for sure. Anyway, something like that. There's a bunch of different ways you can play it. Distribute the chevrons pretty much however you like. All right, guys. Thanks again for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this Tomb King vs. Dwarf showdown, and we'll be back with more content soon. You guys take care.